Thank you very much. It's an honor and a lot of responsibility to be here today and make presentation to such a group of people, to the people who have a lot on stake at this region and depends a lot on our study. Therefore, I will present the result, basically the final results of our work. And objective of our study, it's a few words. It's a preliminary pre-feasibility level engineering assessment of the project area. We're talking about north part of Willapa Bay. And develop a range of potential erosion protection solutions. This is where we started probably 3.5 months before. And I'm not going to talk a lot about previous study. We already had one presentation. I just wanted to put the summary of a previous presentation which was in this room on September 21. Therefore, based on analysis, which I'm not going to repeat, we found out that it's this area is actually can be represented by 3 different regions which have different physical coastal processes, and therefore any solution for shoreline erosion protection should relate to these coastal processes or to each of the regions separately. You cannot have one solution for everything. And I'm not going again to talk about analysis and studies, therefore we have 3 areas. And what we're supposed to do next when we made the presentation in 21st, to at first complete engineering assessment, we did complete it, and then prioritize shoreline erosion protection, and most important, develop criteria for development of alternatives. And when we have this criteria, we suppose develop feasible shoreline erosion, shoreline alternatives. This is what I will be talking today about criteria and about alternatives. And the first good news I want to tell you is that we found out that we can provide the shoreline protection. We can provide, but it's not simple, it's not straightforward, it's not cheap, and maybe very complicated. But this is what, as I mentioned, I will be talking about criteria and feasible alternatives. At first, one more time, we look at the 3 regions. Region 1, Region 2, and Region 3. They have a different physical processes. And a previous presentation, we describe and explain why this process, what are these processes. And when we finish our study and present report, you will be able to read all this analytical and scientific stuff. But what most important, we're talking about develop shoreline erosion protection criteria and feasible alternatives. And for what I will start with Region 1. Therefore, I'm not going to do any scientific, any complicated. I will be talking about specifically, as I mentioned one more time, criteria and alternatives. And then criteria. When we started to put together the criteria, we recognized there are so many of them. And we don't know which of them are important or not. For example, criteria, what we're going to protect. We're going to protect highway, we're going to protect cranberry bogs, we're going to protect tribal lands, or private lands, or all together. It depends what you select the criteria, at least in the first item, on the first bullet. You might have a huge range of different alternatives. Or if you wanted to, another criteria, durability. How long you wanted to use this protection last? Short term, 10 years, or more than 20 years? Or environmental aspect. Do you want to do some additional benefits like a wetlands protection or snow plower, or all of a sudden flooding. If all of a sudden flood protection or cost of resilient aspect like tsunami, it's a whole aspect of different ideas of alternatives, but also different potential funds. Anyway, when we look at all these alternatives, we recognize we will not be able to formulate and develop in our side. Therefore, what we did, we started. We started to look at some criteria and develop the alternatives corresponding to this criteria. Therefore, I believe that this is a starting point which will go further down. Even we're right now finishing our work, but what we develop the process, I believe, where all of you can contribute to the criteria, and then you will be able to, at the end, when you all together agree the criteria, and then we can select the final solution and final alternative for your region or regions. If you agree with me, therefore I move forward to region 1. And for example, again, it's not cast in stone, it's just starting process and dynamic. For example, let's assume the region 1, scenario 1. And we select criteria. We only protect Highway 105 and only protect cranberry bogs. And we are talking about long-term solution, therefore more than 20 years. Again, this is only one scenario, and it doesn't mean we recommend this scenario. I just show you as an example. And if we agree, if we decided to have only this criteria, what is the solution? Again, we made a couple of different solutions, but for this region 1, the simple solution is like this one. What it is, we're going to build this as a rock revetment along the highway. And we know it will work. We know because we will be able to design that it will work for years. However, keep in mind, this is a criteria only concern cranberry bogs and highway. And it's only for region 1. Again, we will be talking about money next slide, and I just want to tell you, we didn't do any new design. All information on the money and the cost we pull out from different existing projects, or from Army Corps of Engineers, or from DOT. Chuck helped us a lot with information. We didn't do design. Obviously, if we are going to next step and we need to select the alternative and criteria, we will do design and cost may change. But right now, let's see what does it mean scenario 1 with this criteria for region 1, how much it costs. Therefore, you can see the construction cost is approximately $10 million. Therefore, in region 1, highway will be in cranberry bogs, will be protected. However, you can see how many assumptions we use in developing this cost. Obviously, if the rate of erosion, we use right now 8,000 feet, we know what erosion occurred to the north and west. Therefore, if we wait a little bit longer, it may be different. Or we didn't put contingencies. Based on the current prices, we do not include any permitting and engineering effort. We do not include mitigation if mitigation is required, and so on and so on. But again, this is a cost, construction cost estimate only, and I would say this is not even preliminary. It's a magnitude of estimate. Therefore, you see we don't have decimals and anything. This is what scenario 1, if we decided to do only for highway, you remember the criteria number 1. Now I'm going to say, let's assume that we change the criteria. Now, we add to everything what was before, we wanted to save private lands. If we want to save private lands, we found out we can do it. How we can do it? Again, maybe more alternatives, but we pick up only, for example, to make it simple, one alternative. Simple. We know that groin and dike are working, and we need to put revetment. Therefore, if we properly design this area, we are going to protect private properties, and we protect the highway, and we protect cranberry in region 1. Therefore, how we're going to, now we're moving to the money. Again, we didn't do any new design, nothing specific details, we just ballpark a level of estimate. Therefore, we use the previous groin, the previous dike, all previous. This is 1,000 feet, 6,500 feet groin. And if we're going to the cost estimate, if we wanted to add to this one, we are talking about $34 million. You see, change one criteria and price goes up. Okay, again you see this all this cost. I ask you and beg you, don't take this money and go out and live with this money. It's all variable, it may change significantly. It's just for you, for comparison, to understand what's important criteria and money, criteria and money. Now let's move to region 2. Region 2, if we take the scenario 1, therefore, for region 2, scenario 1, we only provide protection from Highway 105 and cranberry bogs for long-term, for long-term time. Therefore, solution you probably expect is straightforward. Only what is going to be added to this, we need to do rehabilitation of the groin and dike, existing dike. And we put certain amount of money just based on engineering intuition into this one. Therefore, if we are using scenario 1 and criteria only highway and cranberry bogs, this is solution, long-term solution, and this is cost. And it does include rehabilitation of existing groin and dike.
Vladimir, when you say rehabilitation, what does that involve in the existing groin? Is that in bringing it up above water, the underwater?
It's just bring to the condition what was before. We know that it's deteriorated, it changed, and unfortunately we cannot estimate how much it changed and how much deteriorated, but we know it did. And because we don't have a very little information, we cannot use it. Therefore, what we put $5 million for rehabilitation of these structures, like 30%, a little bit less than 30% of original cost. Now, if you add to for the same region 2, if you take another criteria and you add private property, the solution will be slightly different. We are going to reinforce revetment, we are going to build properly, and plus rehabilitate existing groin and dike. How much it costs? You see this turnout, it's again, it's $14 million this time. And it's include $5 million of the rehabilitation of the existing structure. Now I'm moving to, if you don't have any questions, arguments, let's move to the region 3. The region 3, if we are going to put the criteria, again, it's only because we selected. You may change this criteria, you might, but we selected highway tribal lands, and private lands. Obviously, the cranberry bogs already protected because they are on this side in region 2 and region 1. Therefore, if we take only this criteria, therefore one of the solution is a rock revetment. And if you put a rock revetment again, we didn't do any engineering for this part, which is typical from the other projects and from previous studies. And look at the cost. It's the construction cost $22 million. Can be done. Can it be different on other alternatives? Yes, it can. For example, if you take scenario 2, we're going to use only sand, but slightly different sand than it was last year or a couple of years ago. This alternative assumed that we're going to put sand along the shore. Again, we didn't design it. We took cross-section configuration to meet the volume from previous project, and only what we know, just approximate time. It's not forever, but if we wanted to have a long-term maintenance, therefore you need to replenish every 10 years. Therefore, the cost for this is $10 million, but with every maintenance of 10 years replenishment. Therefore, it's additional money which needs to be determined how much. Now, let's look at the dynamic revetment. A lot was discussed about dynamic revetment. This is what is dynamic revetment along this shoreline. If you take dynamic revetment, you will get to the $33 million. Therefore, but you don't need to do, you do need to do maintenance, but maintenance every 10 years, and obviously the scale of maintenance much smaller. Or, for example, we take another alternative. What we did, we add to this criteria snow plover habitat enhancement, because we heard that placement of this berm helps to enhance a snowy plover habitat. And we are looking for the same alternative which Corps of Engineers designed and placed like this sand berm. Only what we did, we extended sand berm to the to the entire length of the region. And what the cost is $10 million too, but you need to have every 5 years to do maintenance repair. At the end, this is what summary. For the, if you select region, you select criteria, you see on the third column, and then you can pick up different scenario, and then this is what you are going to have.